Hello and welcome. My name is Drew and I'm the Aspiring Master. And today we're going to be talking about the 5 things you need to know about empathy. Here we go. Again, like clockwork, we're going to go over to our trusted dictionary and take a look at the scholastically agreed upon definition. Merriam-Webster tells us that empathy is empathy, the action of understanding, being aware of, being sensitive to, and vicariously experiencing the feelings, thoughts, and experience of another, of either the past or present without having the feelings, thoughts, and experience fully communicated in an objectively explicit manner. A surprisingly detailed and fairly accurate definition that I will add to, but let's move on to number 5. Empathy is not sympathy. Let me explain the dictionary definition of empathy in layman's terms and add a little bit based on my experience. What the definition is basically saying is that empathy allows another to be able to identify with and understand experiences or feelings of another without needing a lot of explanation. But, and here's the new bit, without getting entangled in those emotions. So basically what I'm saying is that an empathetic person is able to emotionally identify and understand where someone is or isn't coming from without needing it to be explained and without emotional entanglement. Now, emotional entanglement is becoming too deeply involved in a situation or person emotionally, creating confusion in both parties. So this is like being able to see someone in boiling water, understand on a gut level the pain that that person is going through, and being able to put on a wetsuit, wade into the boiling water, and help that person out without getting burned. Sympathy, on the other hand, is not that at all. The dictionary says sympathy is sympathy, the act or capacity of entering into or sharing the feelings or interests of another. So sympathy, in layman's terms, is seeing another person's plight, and in order to understand it and connect with it, we search within ourselves for a hurt, wound, or similar situation that we think the other person is experiencing, connecting to that feeling, and then trying to assist that person out of that pain as if they were ourselves, all the while feeling the pain and emotion ourselves. So, using the analogy that I used for empathy, it's like being able to see someone in boiling water, wading in there to help them without a wetsuit while you are burning just as badly as they are. This can cause you to break down and just sit in the water with them, unable to get either them or yourself out, but being able to assuage some of their pain because you really feel it right along with them, and misery does love company. On one hand, the empathetic person can be objective, while the sympathetic person cannot. The reason I say this is because if you are a person in need of rescue, it helps to have someone that can identify and be objective to help you to resolve your pain, rather than someone who can identify with your pain and wallow in it with you. In one instance, there's movement through, and in the other, there's no movement at all. So, in short, an empath doesn't feel the emotion as if it were their own, but can instead connect to an emotional understanding and assist, while a person in sympathy emotionally identifies and experiences that emotional pain with the person, which can cloud the perception of what would be best to serve the other to move through or past the pain. Number 4, empathy humanizes people. We as humans tend to dehumanize other people in order to feel better about ourselves or to justify our actions. So in the handy Merriam-Webster dictionary, we can define dehumanization as dehumanize, to address or portray someone in a way that obscures or demeans that person's humanity or individuality. So, guess what? We dehumanize people every day, even when we're not aware of it. When we call another person in front of us driving slowly an inconsiderate B-word, or when we get irate with someone with a different language, slowing our day down at the bank line because people can't understand him or her. We turn these people into things that are in our way. These are human beings that have to deal with their own disabilities, disgruntlement, dissatisfaction, and disheartening interactions with the world, just like we do. But they may not have the advantages that we ourselves have, and so may slow us down in our pursuit for our own goals. In order to justify our irritation with these people, we categorize these human beings and make them objects that are in the way of us accomplishing our goals instead of people. And we use them as scapegoats. Hold on. A scapegoat is a goat upon whose head is symbolically placed the sins of the people, after which it's sent into the wilderness in a biblical ceremony of Yom Kippur. Or in human terms, one that bears the blame for others. Wait, where was I? In order to justify our irritation with them, we categorize these human beings, making them objects that are in the way of us accomplishing our goals instead of people, and using them as scapegoats. Okay, there we go. And using them as scapegoats for our irritation at the inconvenience of being delayed or otherwise stopped from attaining a goal we feel we have a right to. So instead of treating them like me, we treat them as if they were just menial objects to justify our rash behavior. This is dehumanization. Empathy does not allow this because, at its heart, empathy is a humanizing action. In order to empathize with another, one must be able to see that other human as like myself. Because to empathize, a person needs to access emotions that are the same or similar to another person, which humanizes them as we must see the other as ourselves in order to empathize with them, placing them right beside us on the humanity scale. We cannot empathize with a rock, as we've never been one, but because most humans feel the same emotions, even if they're for different reasons, we have the ability to empathize with them and to share the knowledge that, just like me, they might just be having a bad day. Number 3, empathy can be learned. I've heard it said that one is either empathic or they're not. While it is true that sociopathic and psychopathic people cannot learn empathy as those personalities don't have the capacity for it emotionally or chemically, the rest of us can, though it may be a very hard road for some. Thankfully, less than 1% of the population of the world are psychopaths or sociopaths, also known as antisocial personality disorder, or APD for short. Science shows us that one of our base needs is to connect to others. And it's actually our first need, even before water or food. In order to survive as a helpless infant, we need the connection of a caregiver first, so that that person can provide us with our other needs. This need for connection grows with us, helping us create communities where we accomplish far more than we can accomplish ourselves, with providing food, shelter, water, protection, and the innovation of collaborative thinking and problem solving. Because we're actually physically designed to connect to others, it's when we feel disconnected from our society and people in general that we find that we stop having the emotional health that allows empathy. This is especially prevalent with children who've had emotional trauma, who disconnect emotionally to protect themselves from emotional hurt and pain. Actually, there's many of us that have been burned in this way, either by social rejection or lack of empathy towards ourselves that has caused us to give up on empathy altogether. Well, they don't care, so why should I? Is a phrase I hear a lot when I talk to people about sharing and understanding others. There is a light at the end of the tunnel, and we can learn to connect again. But it all comes down to our own emotional health and our view of ourselves. Toxic shame, or the shame that we feel because we internally feel inferior to those around us, is our major block to feeling acceptable to ourselves. And in order for others to feel acceptable to us, we need to feel acceptable to ourselves. To heal this requires, you guessed it, empathy. And that brings us to number 2. In order to learn empathy, we need to be empathized with. What? Wait a second. Isn't that a paradox? Not a paradox. Who's editing this thing? Okay, so though it sounds like a which came first, the duck or the egg scenario, it isn't. Empathy, unless one is a sociopath or a psychopath, is innately in us. Remember when I said we are hardwired for connection and it is one of our base needs? Well, empathy is a part of that package. We need to be connected for survival. And in order to do this, we develop skills that ensure this survival technique. And empathy is a major tool for this. We quite naturally develop empathy as we grow, unless the growth gets interrupted by trauma or the prevalent instruction from our elders that is contrary to it. When we go through adolescence, we learn from all our experiences and our instructors, our parents, peers, and literal teachers. In the Western society that I live in, it has grown so large that we've lost our communities and have become an everyone for themselves environment. Our instruction is one that has moved away from empathy to one of eat or be eaten. This is much of the instruction that we've been receiving, and that has been overlaying our tools that we need for connection. Empathy being one of them. This doesn't mean that we lack empathy, just that it gets lost and we need to find it again. Sometimes we can find it by doing our own research. Sometimes our families are able to teach us the skills for it as we grow up. But for the most part, in my experience, we've buried much of our empathy skill under our deep feeling of rejection and divorced ourselves quite literally from it. Luckily, we have those people that can help us access this vital emotion again. Professionals and even people with personal understanding of empathy share their knowledge all the time with us through books and videos. And this touches our inner knowing of empathy, which can and does bring it forth. In the end, our capacity for empathy is always there, as a skill most of us were born with. And we can access it by reconnecting with ourselves with the help of the empathy from trusted friends and even professionals. And then to give ourselves the love and space to reconnect with our own empathy, which we can then share with others that are in need of it. Number 1, empathy can save the world. This is a bold statement, I know, but the evidence is it. Empathy humanizes other people around us, and in humanizing, we see them as ourselves and can accept them and be patient with their quirks of character. This, in turn, brings about peace, because war with someone who we see as ourselves just makes no sense. Empathy brings us to a place of caring for other human beings we encounter. When we understand that most other people, regardless of culture, are human beings that experience the same kind of emotions, pains, and joys that we do, we can start to look at cooperating, and in cooperating, we will move into the future with more support and caring for one another. I'm not talking about a kumbaya universal love, but more of an understanding and respect of what we share rather than the focus on what we don't. Empathy in our leaders would lead to more humanitarian choices rather than the dehumanizing, statistical, profit-driven leadership that we have right at the moment. Empathy, just in our own personal relationships, would help us bridge the dividedness we have encouraged, both politically and socially right now. Empathy is a natural treaty maker as it humanizes both sides in a conflict and allows us to see the humanness of our enemies. All in all, empathy is one of the best tools to assist us to really living love and understanding one another. Working on cultivating empathy in ourselves can only help us move to a more cooperative and loving future. Well, that's it for this segment. Feel free to place your comments and suggestions below, and don't forget to subscribe and hit the notifications bell to be notified when we post new content. Stay tuned for another Top 5 coming your way soon.